Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas.
Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. I have two guests here with me today, Mack and Kaylee Walstad. They are the leads of EDRM, a global project-based organization that I suspect all of you are quite familiar with. Mary is CEO and Chief Legal Technologist and brings a wealth of experience. She's a former executive director of a certification organization known for her skills in relationship and community building, as well as for the depth of her eDiscovery knowledge, which goes back pretty much to the beginning of eDiscovery as we know it. She is frequently sought out by media for comment on industry issues and by conference organizers to participate, moderate a panel, lead a workshop, deliver a keynote. She has authored a number of publications about eDiscovery, including A Process of Illumination, a practical guide to electronic discovery, considered by many to be the first popular book on eDiscovery, and co-editor of Thomson Reuters West Treatise, the Thomson Reuters West Treatise, eDiscovery for Corporate Counsel. Kaylee is Chief Strategy Officer at Reveal, and the former Vice President of Client Engagement at a certification organization. Known for her role in building communities, she unites people and companies across the globe and helps amplify brand for partners through social media and events. Kaylee as well is a frequent speaker on a variety of topics, from personal development to the nuances of eDiscovery. Kaylee, Mary, welcome.
Woo, hey, George.
Glad to have you here.
Thanks for the invitation. We're delighted.
Yes, so I'd like to start out. It has been almost 2 years now, I think 2 years next week, since the two of you took the helm at EDRM. Is that right?
That is right. And for your viewers that may not remember, George, new entrants, who's the co-founder of the EDRM?
Well, Tom Gelbman and I started EDRM in 2004.
Name again? Kaylee, what was Tom Gelbman's sidekick's name?
Oh, Tom Gelbman's sidekick. I have to think hard. Would it be the one, the only George Socha?
It would indeed.
Well, in 2016, Tom retired. He and I handed EDRM over to Duke, and then 2 years ago, you two took over EDRM. Tell me, how's it been going?
Well, it has been quite the interesting journey. We got off to a fast start, super excited, and a few months later, our world shut down in the pandemic, and we found ourselves having to pivot and create some new programs and some different support systems for our community. Mary?
No, absolutely. And stepping out prior to a pandemic is a little different than finding yourself in the middle of a pandemic. Yep. But George, EDRM was built to last. And we are so grateful for the work that you and Tom did, the foundational work in growing it up. And so thank you for that.
But you two have taken it to another level. I'd like to talk about some of the different things that you've done, in part to adjust to the pandemic, in part to extend and expand EDRM. And let's talk about something that has hit, what is it now? Week 90, was it? Or week 80?
80.
102.
I lose track. You don't.
80 weeks of the EDRM community support call, which Mary, right at the beginning of the pandemic, called me and said, we're going to need a community support call for this. People need an outlet. People are going to need support. And we thought it was going to be more for people getting COVID or a loved one getting COVID, just for support to talk about what was happening. And really what happened at the beginning of the pandemic, George, you remember, is firms and companies started laying off people in droves. So we started getting calls from people that had been in their position for a decade, almost 2 decades, thought they were going to retire from this firm, and suddenly found themselves in the middle of the pandemic without a job at a time when nobody was hiring. And so our little community support call, and the community at large, really put our arms around people seeking jobs. And one by one, everybody brokered introductions and helped people to, I think, pretty quickly to find work. Wouldn't you guys say?
Absolutely. It was difficult for people to try and find an opportunity in the beginning of the pandemic, because so many firms were trying to reduce the risk. Some firms and organizations used it as I guess an excuse to to do things they might have wanted to do in better times. When we first started the support call, it was out of my experience in Chicago, George, where you find yourself today, at the beginning of the AIDS crisis. And there wasn't a lot of information. It was a novel virus. People were getting sick. There were employment things. But it was really important for people to talk with each other. And we thought, Kaylee and I thought, that what we'd be talking about would be health-related issues. But I'd say the first 6 months were all employment-related issues, or things about working from home, or and trying to organize that all up, and the family things that people needed to do. And then later, I'd say now we're having more conversations about how do you safely re-enter. And the job thing has totally flipped into a candidates market. Go figure.
That's not what any of us were anticipating at that point. With the community support call, of course, it's been a place where people can talk openly about their concerns, their fears, their challenges. But you've done more than give people a platform to discuss those things. I think you've done a little bit of assistance and brokering in some fashion, helping people find new positions. No?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And
Oh yeah.
What's cool is we get, and always have, get a lot of reach out from companies saying, hey, we're looking for just this kind of person to fit into our culture, or we have 3 positions now. Do you know some great people you can recommend? And so that's always a fun thing that we enjoy doing. And I think too, George and Mary, the community support call has always had sort of, during the pandemic, the mental health conversations that people, it used to be taboo to have those conversations, and it's not. Going through this collective trauma that is ongoing, I think every week has brought a different challenge to people, and to having that ability to discuss those challenges and how they affect you has been really helpful to me personally, myself.
Yeah. These things are not recorded, of course, so that people can speak authentically. But we're going through a collective trauma, And the classic definition of PTSD is when you just stuff things down and you don't express them as you're going through something that's horrendous, like we are all going through. So it's also, a place to have our thoughts and our feelings witnessed by others and in the moment, or at least as close to the moment as you can get, so that we can emerge on the other side. We're not going to be, of course, free of the effects of what the heck has been going on the last couple of years here, but it helps, I think, with resilience for all of us. I know it's helped me.
When you two took charge 2 years ago of EDRM, it was, let's say, an opportunity for you to do some reorganization and restructuring. Yeah. And you put in place an advisory committee and some additional mechanisms. Talk a little about what you've done with that.
Well, Kaylee, what would you say is the first thing we did?
The first thing we did was put the All Are Welcome mat out. Look at, there had been an advisory council in place for 1 year, I think, that was established by the then director, John Robier. Am I saying that right? And so we looked at that and said, whoa, we need a little bit more diversity. We need more representation from different people other than attorneys. So we went about really putting together sort of a multidisciplinary representation. And also the EDRM is in 113 countries, George. Can you believe that? 113.
That's amazing.
So it is amazing. And so we needed to really have our advisory council represent that the global community, not just the US community. One of the things as we're going through this, and we were looking at the advisory council thinking, what do we need to do? We remembered our trip to Tokyo for Jonathan Hiroshi Rossi's eDiscovery Summit. And the EDRM was in every presentation from around the world. And Mary called it, and we were at ACEDS at the time, but we were so struck by the presentations from everywhere, from Brazil to Germany. It didn't matter. And so Mary started calling it the good graffiti. It's everywhere. And so we sort of kept that good graffiti theme, but I would say that was a big thing, was all are welcome, give it a refresh, open the doors, put the mat out. That's kind of the feel that we wanted to have. Mary?
Yeah, and then what we wanted to do is put a structure of support under the projects. Obviously, Duke, being an academic institution, had a little bit of a different approach, and we were very focused on the bottom up. What do the project contributors want to contribute? What are the things that are emerging in the community that are ripe for consensus? What are the things that you shouldn't even try to get consensus on? Those kind of things. And so we were watching the projects and seeing which projects needed some assistance. And so then over the course of the year, we did sunset a couple that where there weren't, the enthusiasm wasn't there. And of course, with the pandemic, people need to fit it into various things. But then lo and behold, people like you, George, started saying things like, we need a project around analytics and machine learning. And so then we set to getting those projects going. And I think your project, George, you've got over 25 of the best data scientists in the history of Earth in our community on your project, don't you?
Maybe 26, who knows?
Exactly.
So you started out as well with just, I think there were only 2 or 3 active projects when you took over. You've got many more than that now. How many projects are going on right now?
Oh my gosh.
over a dozen.
Mhm.
And a lot of them are really close to submitting their draft work product. In fact, 3 are with our advisory council for edits right now, and they'll go out for public comment in at the beginning of October. But we have some really, really cool projects with like processing guidelines and data mapping and how what's the process and frameworks for that. So we've got some really great minds and great ideas. So we're very excited about the project community.
Which project is closest to publishing something?
Processing guidelines, I think, Mary, don't you? With
Yeah,
Craig Ball and John Tredenick.
Yeah, we've already published the IGRM 4.0 diagram, which will become final on December 1st. And the Privlog project has some guidelines that have been published and they're being re-looked at. And the AI project published their primer. But yes, we've got processing guidelines. We've got the data mapping, and the processing guidelines are probably the ones that'll go fastest, I think. Yeah.
And state rules, that's a project that's ongoing, interactive. If you go to our website and look under projects and select state rules, you'll see a map of the United States. It's interactive. You can click on it. Ohio, I think, is the one that we have hooked up right now.
Yep.
But yeah, I think they have half, at least, if not more, of the US covered so far. And they're still looking. So if you're interested in getting involved, info@edrm.net. We'd love to welcome you.
And is there anything particular that we're looking for in people who are interested in getting involved?
Yes, we are interested in people who can take off their employer hat when they come to generate some consensus. Obviously, you come with a perspective and all of that, but we're all about the collaboration and not driving your point necessarily. Yeah. That's the thing where you try to find things that are most likely to succeed as a consensus project. Yes.
So someone who's willing to take off that hat of bias, if you will. What else do you look for in people who might be volunteering to help out on projects?
Well, I think this is one of the things that people may not realize is that we do welcome people onto projects that are not experts. We love the experts for their expertise in drafting and, their hands-on experience. But we have a lot of people that are just learning things right now, especially in your project area, George, the analytics and machine learning. And we feel that new entrants into various disciplines can contribute as well, because I don't know if you've ever had the experience of talking about e-discovery and it's like inside baseball. You're using spoliation and FRE 502D and you're talking this and that, and if you haven't been in the vertical or the community very long, you don't really understand what those things are. So as they read the output, they can reflect back and say, I don't understand this piece. Can you maybe break this piece down a little bit better? So the newer entrants are either filling a very necessary project management role, because maybe they don't know about whatever it is you're talking about, but they sure as heck know about project management. Yeah. And so they can keep the project moving and contribute in that way, or they can edit and reflect back to the experts where they need a little bit more. What would you say, Kaylee?
I can add nothing to that beautiful descriptor.
Are you looking for people from specific types of organizations with specific disciplines, any specific types of experience?
Well, interesting that you bring that up, George, because yeah, we love welcoming people from all different organizations. EDRM is there are a few organizations in our space that welcome, say, the government into the room, that welcome the plaintiffs bar into the room with a seat at the table, and or that will have attorneys working with paralegals, working with IT people, or security people are welcome at the table. Privacy, compliance. We're looking for a multidisciplinary group with different organizational experience, so that we can develop consensus models that address the majority of people's concerns. And so not-for-profits, educational organizations, everybody's welcome.
If people are interested in joining, what sort of commitment are they going to be making?
Well, you know, George, it's at least 8 hours a day, George. No.
Oh, you've eased up on people.
I have. It's a pandemic. Come on.
The time commitment varies per project, but I think the big thing is our projects consist of many people. And so at times in our industry, we get busier. Mm-hmm. And so we may not be able to do as much, but there's other people that can fill in. So George, what would you say? I really don't think people spend more than an hour a week. Do you?
I think that's probably about as much as most people put in. Yeah. Certainly in my experience, projects have peaks of activity, right? But they also have times when there's not much going on. It isn't anybody's day job besides the two of you.
That's right.
EDRM projects, after all.
Yeah.
If someone has an idea for a new project, what does that process look like?
You know what? That is such a good question, because first and foremost, Mary and I do not come up with the ideas for the projects. Mm-hmm. They're brought to us based on a challenge or a situation that someone is seeing and thinks that this project would be helpful to the industry at large to address whatever issue or challenge that they're facing or have seen others face as well. So people just reach out to us. info@edrm.net goes to Mary and I, and then we schedule a call and have a discussion. And we've had a lot of people reach out with great ideas, to include yourself, George.
Exactly. And then the other step would be to engage with our other project trustees to see if there's overlap or something like that. Then we put out a call for volunteers. This is something similar to what I think was one of the pieces of advice you gave us, George, is don't assume that the people that you know that have an interest in a particular topic are the ones that are going to actually step up and contribute to a project. Put the call out very broadly, and you'll be very surprised by the people who step up. And so that's what we've done in our newsletter that goes out every week. We put out a call for volunteers for whatever project would like them. And so at that point, the project scopes itself, and the advisory council is there as a sounding board if the project needs some help with that scope. Yeah.
You have, in terms of the number of people involved in the project, or how long a project is likely to last, any guidelines or limitations, anything like that?
Not really, George. We've got some projects that we that were ongoing as we took the reins, and they're complex projects. And when they finish, they finish. We're not doing any directive or anything like that to any project.
Do that again, Mary. We're not doing what?
No, don't get me going now.
Oh my God.
Don't get me
We're not
going.
the project police. No,
we aren't. We don't do that. piece. But I think, like with your project, George, the analytics and machine learning, people had different interests, and so you were able to break into 4 sub-projects. I think there probably is a critical mass. Like, I don't know if you'd want to go over 25 on a project. That'd be hard to have conversations. And I think the project teams very naturally fall into their own rhythm of how they like to communicate with each other and work together. And we're here as a support if they're having difficulties in any way. Yeah.
As you look to the future, where would you like to see EDRM go? What would you like it to see it look like, say, a year or 3 or 5 years from now? Whatever time frame works for you.
What do you say, Kaylee? Intergalactic?
Yeah. World domination, like that. I think one of the things that EDRM is known for, and kudos to you and the fabulous Tom Gelbman, as we see new data types or new challenges or new rules, there's always a need for some help and some guidelines and or frameworks. And so for us that for the EDRM, a year from now, 5 years from now, we want to be relevant. We want to have the industry's best experts along with those wanting to learn. So one of the cool things with having that all our welcome is we've hooked up a lot of people who really wanted to be a mentor and those who wanted to find a mentee, especially in the pandemic. So not only are the projects putting out great work and having super discussions, but it's also a place to network and meet new people, find a new job, find a mentor. And so I think our goal is to continue on that journey and see where it takes us. Mary?
Yeah, and then we also want to make it so that e-discovery is not a block to the courts or to justice, or a drag on organizations and individuals' finances. And so one of the things we've got going is a unique dupe ID project where Reveal is involved in it. We're very grateful for that. Trying to find out how to deduplicate email across platforms. And that would, I mean, that's an unnecessary extra expense to have to reprocess everything and making your calls attach and etc. So we're actually looking forward to solving some problems that will free up energy and capital and people's time to do other things.
Well, any last words for our audience from either of you? Topic of your choosing.
Well, there is a lot going on, George. Thanks to you and our partner Reveal for having us on today. We're just very grateful for the invitation and excited we're in high season. There's a lot of conferences and education and cool things going on. So be sure to get involved. If you don't know how to get involved, but you want to, reach out to us.
Yep. info@edrm.net is our distro list. It'll go to both Kaylee and myself. And so that's the easiest, best way to get in touch, or reach out on LinkedIn. I know somebody in EDRM who really likes LinkedIn. I don't know what her name is, though.
Well, Mary, Kaylee, thank you very much. Mary Mack and Kaylee Walstad, of course, are the leads of and the people in charge now of EDRM. I am very pleased with how you have been shepherding EDRM forward and look for great things out of the two of you. Our guest next week will be Jason Velasco, who these days is at an organization called Condato, and he'll tell us about that.
Ooh,
he's founded a good one.
He's awesome.
He's always interesting to talk with.
He is.
Mary, Kaylee, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, George. Thanks
George.
for joining us.